How I ended up on a hijacked plane and sat there for 6 bloody hours. A satirical sketch by Sergei Besedin. Picture this. 1992, for those who remember it, and who remember it in Russia. Everything's gone up 20-fold. People are wandering the streets gobsmacked, gawping at foreign stuff they'd never seen before in the commercial kiosks. Ulker biscuits, Toblerone chocolate, royal spirit, mysterious liqueurs like Baron and Amaretto, instant drinks like Yuppie and Zuko. Most of these goods sat there like museum pieces because nobody could afford them. The average wage in Novosibirsk was about $40. Most Soviet factories and research institutes were in their death throes, people sitting there twiddling their thumbs out of habit, not knowing what to do next. And in this atmosphere, some local enthusiasts decide to shoot a feature film called Mad Flight about air hijackers. Of course, it wasn't exactly Con Air, Air Force One, or Turbulent Skies. It was a low-budget collection of daft gags, cobbled together any old how, and edited even worse. And the three main actors, recruited from Novosibirsk theaters, the ginger, awkward Aitov, the hyperactive Viskrabentsev, and the professorial, dignified Chumachev, seemed to have no clue what they were doing in this film. In brief, the plot goes like this. The aforementioned trio are flying in the same row from Sibirsk to Volgorod, and through a misunderstanding, they're taken for terrorists who want to hijack the plane to Turkey. How topical that sounds 25 years later, eh? And the whole story revolves around us. The pilots are already planning what they'll buy in Ankara. One passenger dreams of his own harem, and his squad of new recruits on the same plane, instead of neutralizing the criminals, shake their hands and promise to help. So I'm reading in the paper an advert saying they need extras. I'd practically just finished writing my dissertation and had bugger all to do before the defense. Plus, the stellar wages were calling to me. You see, I had a completely warped idea of film industry reality. And since I was living mainly on my stipend, well, and they paid me something at the factory where I was doing my placement, I was constantly starving. People do daft things when they're hungry, so I rang about the casting call.
In an extremely pleasant voice, I was invited to come to the city center near the Victory Cinema, where a comfortable coach would be waiting to take all the extras to Tolmacello Airport. And indeed, it was waiting there. Within an hour, we were already on the tarmac, where a decommissioned Tu-154 stood glumly. I think it didn't even have wings or a tail. By the way, forgot to mention it was about 95 degrees Fahrenheit, so inside the cabin it was only slightly more bearable than hell itself. The director was bearded, shaggy-haired, bespectacled, and exaggeratedly optimistic. These days, he'd make a proper hipster vegan on an e-scooter. "This won't take long," he announced to the assembled crowd in such a high cockerel voice that you immediately wanted to believe him. "Maybe an hour or two. We're only shooting 3 scenes. Right, scene 1. Word's gone around the cabin that terrorists have hijacked the plane. But actually, there are no terrorists. They sort of exist and sort of don't. Dead simple. And you need to whisper to each other, and the last passenger will faint." "Well, what's not to understand?" someone responded from the crowd. "Sort of exist and sort of don't. Easy peasy." Everyone was seated, and I got an aisle seat, being very striking looking. At the time, I had curls that would have made Pushkin jealous. "Whisper," the director clapped his hands.
Well, whispering's not exactly rocket science. Honestly, it's not like shifting sacks about, and everyone started doing it. Until then, I'd thought the cameraman would have some special equipment for smooth movement, rails or something, with a dolly on them. It turned out to be simpler and more pathetic. The director simply shoved the cameraman in the back with constant acceleration, and the cameraman ran down the aisle. We shot the first take. And then the director's inner Stanislavski awakened. "Where's the drama?" he wailed. "Where's the terror in your eyes? Who whispers like that?
You look like you're discussing the price of sunflower seeds. Just imagine the horror, the Armageddon, terrorists on board. You, young man, he turned to me, you should lean right across the aisle in your emotional state and tell the neighbors this news. That's how I see the scene. Once more, from the top. We shot another take, then a third and fourth. After about the sixth take, the director threw in the towel, deciding it would have to do. Second scene. Clearly getting a taste for power over the masses, the director announced grandly, one of the characters throws a pistol across the entire cabin. Why, he again didn't explain. The pistol flies in a parabola, and you all follow it with your eyes. Then it lands on the same heroine's lap, and she faints again.
Everyone tensed up and waited for the pistol to be thrown. Forgot to add, the director hurried on, the pistol is also imaginary, and the parabola is imaginary, but the fear must be real. If an outsider had looked into the cabin at that moment, they'd have thought we were rehearsing an absurdist play by Ionesco or Beckett. Throwing, shouted the director. That is, sort of throwing. Start following. Everyone obediently swiveled their heads. There it is, the bearded one got agitated. The imaginary trajectory. Where are you looking? Somewhere out the window. Once more from the top. This is rubbish. We reshot it. Meanwhile, the plane had become as stuffy and hot as a Turkish bath. Children started crying timidly. No one offered food or water. It felt completely like we really were hostages of madmen.
The fourth or fifth hour of filming began. People started actively expressing their displeasure. Last episode, the director said placatingly, the plane goes into a nosedive and everyone loses consciousness. You just need to fall forward with your head on the seat in front. After that, I remember poorly. Everything was in a fog. I only recall that after about 6 hours, this nonsense finally ended. Leave all your phone numbers, the director chirped cheerfully. We'll ring everyone and pay out 50 rubles. How much? The extras felt insulted. After all, a kilo of sugar, for example, cost 90. In the interest of truth, I should note that no one got even that 50 rubles, and the film came out on the big screens by winter and left them without any triumph after a week. If anyone's interested in antiques, you can find it by title on YouTube.
You've been listening to How I Ended Up on a Hijacked Plane and Sat There for 6 Bloody Hours by Sergei Besedin from the 2017 collection Parmesan Hunters.